The man on the curb. It was a cold and quiet morning in downtown Los Angeles. Gray clouds moved slowly across the sky, and the streets were still wet from last night's rain. Keanu Reeves walked alone, wearing his usual worn-out jacket and a black hoodie pulled low over his face. He liked mornings like these, peaceful, simple, honest. They reminded him of the years before the fame, when he used to walk to auditions and dream of something more. As he passed by a familiar corner near a local diner, he heard it: loud laughter, sharp words, and the thud of something hitting the ground. He stopped. On the sidewalk ahead, two young men in expensive clothes stood over an older homeless man. The man was curled up beside a brick wall, his blanket wet and torn, a small shopping cart beside him filled with plastic bottles and scraps. One of the men kicked over the cart, sending its contents rolling across the wet concrete. "Get a job, loser," one of them shouted, grinning as he recorded it on his phone. "Maybe try taking a shower first," the other sneered, holding his coffee like it was a trophy. Keanu didn't move at first. He just watched. The homeless man didn't fight back. He didn't speak. He just sat there, trembling, pulling his wet blanket tighter around himself. Keanu's jaw tightened. He took a slow breath and stepped forward. "Hey," he said softly, his voice firm. The two men turned. One recognized him immediately, eyes going wide. "Dude, is that Keanu Reeves?" The other laughed nervously. "We were just leaving." Keanu didn't raise his voice. He didn't get angry. He just walked past them, knelt beside the homeless man, and helped him sit up. The bullies backed away, their bravado gone in seconds. Keanu looked at the man closely. His face was weathered, skin cracked from the cold. His eyes, however, were gentle, haunted but alive. There was something deep in them, something that made Keanu pause. "What's your name?" Keanu asked softly. The man coughed, his voice barely a whisper. "It's Peter." Keanu nodded. "I'm Keanu. I know who you are." Peter whispered with a small smile. Keanu helped him gather the scattered belongings, one bottle at a time. He didn't speak until everything was back in the cart. "Have you eaten today?" Keanu asked. Peter shook his head. Keanu looked down the street toward the diner. "Come on," he said. "Let's get you something warm." They walked together slowly, the cart squeaking with every step. People stared. Some pointed. Some whispered. But Keanu didn't care. He opened the door to the diner and guided Peter in, the warm smell of eggs and coffee wrapped around them like a hug. A waitress stopped mid-step when she saw them. Sir?" she said, clearly recognizing Keanu. "Do you want a table?" "Yes," Keanu said gently. "Somewhere warm. For both of us." The waitress hesitated, eyeing Peter. "Of course," she said finally, motioning to a booth near the back. They sat down. Peter didn't stop shaking. Keanu ordered eggs, toast, and soup. As the food arrived, Peter looked up and whispered, "Why are you helping me?" Keanu smiled. "Because someone once helped me, and because you don't deserve to be treated like that." Peter blinked fast, his eyes red. He hadn't heard kind words in a long time. "You live around here?" Keanu asked. Peter looked down. "I used to have a place here a long time ago. Thing just fell apart." "What happened?" Peter hesitated. Then slowly, the words came. He had been a carpenter. A good one. Had a small business with his brother. They built furniture, renovated homes, lived honest lives. Then his brother died in a car crash. After that, Peter fell into depression. The business failed. He couldn't keep up with rent. One thing after another. His wife left. His daughter stopped speaking to him. Within a year, he had nothing. "And now I'm here," he said, tapping the table with his shaking finger, "just trying to stay warm." Keanu listened in silence, nodding occasionally. The way Peter spoke, it was full of quiet pain, but not bitterness. Peter still had hope, buried under all that sorrow. Keanu felt something shift inside him. He had planned to go home after breakfast. Instead, he heard himself say, "Come with me." Peter blinked. "What? You can't stay on the street. Not tonight. Not after that. I've got a guest room. It's warm, clean. It's not much, but—" "No," Peter cut in. "I can't do that. You don't know me." "But I know." "Enough," Keanu said. "You're kind. You didn't fight those men. You didn't get angry. You need a break. I can offer you that." Peter looked away, his eyes filled with tears. "Just for one night," Keanu said softly. "No pressure. You can leave any time." After a long pause, Peter nodded. They left the diner together. This time, Keanu helped push the cart. He called a friend who brought a van, and they loaded everything gently. When they arrived at Keanu's house, Peter stood at the door, overwhelmed. This is too much," he said, voice trembling. Keanu smiled. "It's just a house. What matters is who's in it." Inside, Keanu showed him the guest room. It was small but warm. Clean sheets, a soft blanket, fresh clothes. Peter looked around, speechless. "Take a shower if you like," Keanu said. "I'll leave towels out, and there's soup in the kitchen if you get hungry later." Peter stood in the middle of the room, staring at the bed. "I haven't slept indoors in 4 years, he whispered. Keanu gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then start tonight." As Keanu stepped away to give him privacy, Peter whispered something under his breath. Keanu didn't catch it fully, but it sounded like, "Thank you for seeing me." That night, something strange happened. Keanu couldn't sleep. He sat in his living room, staring at the fireplace, thinking about Peter. There was something about the man that felt important, like this wasn't just a chance encounter, and he would be proven right. Because what Peter remembered the next morning, what he finally told Keanu, would change both their lives in ways neither of them could ever imagine. A photo on the fridge morning. Light filtered through the windows of Keanu's home. It was quiet, soft, the kind of silence that feels safe. The air smelled faintly of fresh coffee and clean linens. Keanu was in the kitchen, dressed in sweatpants and a simple shirt, stirring a pot of oatmeal. He moved quietly, not wanting to wake Peter too soon. He hadn't heard a sound from the guest room all night, which was a good sign. Maybe Peter had finally slept deeply, really slept, for the first time in years. As he poured 2 cups of coffee, he heard the floor creak. He looked up. Peter stood in the hallway, freshly showered, wrapped in the clean hoodie Keanu had left on the bed. His face looked different now. The dirt and shadows were gone. Under the wrinkles and gray beard, there was someone you could tell used to smile a lot. "Morning," Keanu said. Peter nodded. "It smells amazing," Keanu smiled. "Sit. Breakfast is ready." They ate in comfortable silence for a while. Peter kept glancing around the kitchen, eyes lingering on the little things. Photos on the fridge, a handmade wooden bowl on the counter, a worn-out book near the fruit basket. Then suddenly, Peter froze. His hand stopped mid-air, the spoon full of oatmeal trembling. He stared at one of the photos on the fridge like he'd seen a ghost. Keanu noticed. "Peter, you okay?" Peter stood up slowly. He reached toward the photo. It was small, faded, a picture of a young girl about 7 years old, wearing a red dress and holding a wooden toy. "Where did you get this?" Peter asked, his voice cracking. Keanu stood too. "That? I didn't take that photo. It came with the house when I bought it. I found it inside a box in the attic. I liked it, so I kept it." "Why?" Peter's eyes filled with tears. He touched the edge of the photo with a shaking finger. That's my daughter," he whispered. Keanu blinked. "What?" "Her name is Emily. She was 7 in that picture. I carved that wooden toy for her birthday. It was the last photo we took before her mother left." Keanu stared at Peter, stunned. "Peter," he said carefully, "this house, you used to live here, didn't you?" Peter nodded slowly. "I built the shelves in the hallway. I carved the kitchen stools by hand. This was my home." Keanu felt a strange chill move through him. He looked around the room, suddenly seeing it all through Peter's eyes. The marks on the wooden floor, the nail holes above the windows, the forgotten photo that had always felt out of place, now made perfect sense. "What happened to your daughter?" Keanu asked softly. Peter sat back down. His face had gone pale. "After my wife left, he began. She took Emily with her. Said she wanted a fresh start away from everything that reminded her of me. I never saw Emily again. I searched, wrote letters, called everyone I could. But they disappeared." He paused, breathing hard. "And then the business failed. I lost the house. I lost myself." Keanu leaned forward. "Do you want to find her?" Peter looked up, hope flickering behind years of pain. "More than anything." Keanu stood. "Then we will." He walked into the living room, grabbed his laptop, and opened a browser. "We'll start with the public records. Maybe her name changed. Maybe there's something. Anything." Peter stared at him. "Why are you doing this?" Keanu smiled softly. "Because you're not invisible, Peter, and nobody deserves to be forgotten." They spent the next 2 hours searching. Names, dates, schools, lost contact forms. Keanu even called his lawyer to help dig deeper, legally and carefully. And then, just after noon, Peter gasped. "That's her," he said, pointing at the screen. "A school newsletter from 2 years ago. Emily Rose Thompson. Volunteer at a shelter in Oakland. Same smile. Older now, mid-20s. But the eyes were unmistakable." Keanu zoomed in on the photo. "It's her." Peter covered his face with both hands and cried. Keanu gently closed the laptop and put a hand on his shoulder. "We're going to find her, Peter, and we'll do it the right way." "But what if she doesn't want to see me?" Peter whispered. "Then you'll know. But right now she's out there, and she might be looking for you too." Later that day, Keanu made a call to someone he trusted, a friend who worked in family reconnections. They explained the process, what steps needed to be followed, how to contact someone respectfully and safely. Peter listened, nodding, wiping tears from his face. It was happening so fast, yet it also felt like it had taken a lifetime. As the sun began to set, Peter sat outside on Keanu's back porch. He watched the sky change colors. He held a warm cup of tea in his hands. Keanu joined him, sitting quietly beside him. "You know," Peter said softly, "I thought my life was over. I thought the best parts of me were behind me. But then you showed up, and suddenly, I don't feel so lost anymore." Keanu smiled. "You were never lost, just waiting to be seen again." They sat there in silence, two souls from different worlds bound now by something deeper than chance. But the story wasn't over. Because the next day, Keanu would get a phone call. A call that would change everything again. And this time, not just for Peter. The call that changed everything. The morning was warm and golden, filled with birdsong and the smell of fresh toast. Keanu sat at the kitchen table with Peter, sharing quiet conversation over breakfast. The man looked brighter than before, his face still marked by life's struggles but now softened by a light of hope. They were laughing gently about something small, something about the way Peter's oatmeal kept slipping off his spoon. When Keanu's phone rang, he picked it up without checking the caller. "Hello?" Keanu said. There was a pause. Then a young woman's voice came through, nervous and shaky. "Hello, I hope this isn't a mistake. Is this Keanu Reeves?" Keanu straightened. "Yes, who's speaking?" "My name is Emily Thompson. I work at a shelter in Oakland. Someone from your team contacted me about a man named Peter." Keanu's eyes flicked to Peter, who froze mid-bite, the spoon shaking in his hand. "Yes," Keanu said gently. "He's here. He's safe." The line went quiet again. Then Emily spoke, her voice breaking. "Is he really my father?" Keanu stood and walked out to the back porch, speaking calmly. "I believe so. He showed me a photo of you. He's been trying to find you for years. He thought you were gone." There was a sniffle on the other end. "I thought he was dead." My mom told me he didn't want us, that he stopped calling. I hated him for so long. Keanu listened quietly, letting her speak. It was years of pain pouring out in a few fragile sentences. But when I saw the message and his name, I remembered things. Good things. He used to sing to me, build toys. He used to carry me on his shoulders. Keanu nodded slowly, even though she couldn't see. He remembers all that too. Can I talk to him? Keanu walked back inside. Peter was still at the table, trembling, eyes wide. Keanu placed the phone on the table and switched it to speaker. It's Emily. Peter's hands covered his mouth. He stared at the phone like it was sacred. A long silence. Then, Dad? Her voice cracked. Is it really you? Peter leaned forward. Emily, my girl. I'm so sorry. His voice was raw, shaking. I looked for you. I never gave up. I thought you hated me. Emily sobbed on the other end. I never hated you, I just didn't know. Mom told me things, but now I'm not sure anymore. I never stopped loving you, Peter said. I lost everything, but not that. Not ever. Keanu quietly stepped out of the room, giving them space. For nearly an hour, father and daughter spoke, sometimes crying, sometimes laughing, sometimes sitting in silence just to hear the other breathing. It was the kind of conversation that healed old wounds one word at a time. Later, Peter came outside and found Keanu sitting in the garden sipping tea. She wants to see me, Peter said, his voice filled with awe. She said she's driving down tonight. Keanu looked up. Are you ready for that? Peter laughed through his tears. No, but I don't want to wait another day. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Peter cleaned the guest room again, even though it was already spotless. He borrowed one of Keanu's jackets and combed his hair. He practiced what to say, how to say it, then laughed at himself for worrying so much. Keanu helped where he could, mostly by reminding Peter to breathe and sit down once in a while. By evening, the house was quiet again. Then came a knock on the door. Peter stood frozen in the hallway. Keanu opened it. A young woman stood there, mid-20s, dressed in jeans and a gray sweater. Her eyes were the same warm hazel as Peter's. Her hands clutched the strap of her purse like it was keeping her steady. Emily? Keanu asked. She nodded. Is he here? Keanu stepped aside. Peter stepped into view, his eyes wide, glistening. Emily gasped, and then she ran. They met in the middle of the hallway, arms wrapping around each other, years of distance vanishing in one long, trembling embrace. I missed you so much, she whispered. I missed you too, Peter choked. Every single day, they cried, holding each other like they'd never let go. Keanu stood back, watching with a quiet smile. There were no cameras, no press, no audience, just love. Later that night, they sat around the fireplace. Peter, Emily, and Keanu. Stories were told, questions were asked, tears were shed, and laughter, real heartfelt laughter, filled the room. Emily shared her life. She had grown into a strong, kind woman. She worked with families at a shelter, helping people get back on their feet. She had never stopped wondering about her father, even when she was told not to. Peter told her about his fall, his mistakes, his regrets. But he also spoke about the hope that never died. The day he met Keanu, the kindness that brought him home. Emily looked at Keanu. You didn't have to do any of this. But you did. Keanu shrugged. Sometimes, all it takes is seeing someone, really seeing them. Peter smiled. He didn't just see me, he saved me. The fire crackled gently beside them, casting soft shadows on the walls. They didn't know it yet, but this was the beginning of something, even bigger, because while they sat in that room rebuilding a family, a news story was about to break. A video, one taken by a witness the day Keanu helped Peter off the street, was going viral, and the world was about to learn what happened on that rainy sidewalk. The video goes viral. The morning after Peter and Emily reunited, the house was filled with a new kind of energy. Warm breakfast smells danced in the air, mixed with the gentle laughter of a father and daughter rediscovering each other. For the first time in years, Peter smiled like a man who had something to live for. Keanu let them have their space. He sat outside on the porch with his tea and his phone, scrolling through the news. He wasn't looking for anything in particular, but then his eyes caught a headline that made his heart skip a beat. Keanu Reeves rescues homeless man from bullies. In Los Angeles, video captures heart-stopping moment. His thumb froze mid-scroll. He tapped the article. A shaky video began to play. It showed two men yelling, one kicking over a cart. Then it showed Keanu stepping in, quietly, calmly, and kneeling beside the homeless man. The sound wasn't perfect, but the moment was powerful. The video ended with the two walking away together under the gray sky. Keanu sighed. He hadn't known anyone was recording. He looked at the date on the post, just a few hours ago. But already it had been shared over 5 million times. He scrolled through the comments. This is what real humanity looks like. He didn't do it for attention. He did it because he's real. This man doesn't just act in movies, he acts in real life. Keanu shook his head softly. It wasn't about him. It never had been. He walked back inside and found Peter and Emily at the kitchen table. They were looking at old photos that Emily had brought with her. Pictures from school, birthdays, drawings Peter had made her as a child. Both of them looked up as Keanu entered. "What's that look?" Emily asked. Keanu hesitated, then held out his phone. "You both should see this." Peter took the phone. As he watched the video, his hands trembled. "Someone recorded it," he whispered. "They did," Keanu said. "It's everywhere now." Emily watched too, her eyes wide. "Dad," she said quietly, "people are seeing the real you. Not just someone on the street. Someone worth knowing." Peter looked away, blinking fast. "I never wanted this kind of attention." "You didn't ask for it," Keanu said gently. "But maybe it's not a bad thing. Maybe it helps others like you." And it did. Because that same day, news outlets began to call. Reporters wanted interviews. Organizations reached out to offer help. Shelters, rehab centers, even carpentry unions wanted to support Peter. Many of them inspired by the story. Keanu helped manage the flood. He asked everyone to give Peter space. No interviews, no flashing cameras. Just dignity. Just choice. Peter didn't say yes to any offers at first, but he did start writing. In the evenings, he filled notebooks with pieces of his story. Where he had been, what he had learned, the things he wished someone had told him when he lost everything. Emily read some of it. "Dad," she said, "this could help people." Peter shrugged. "Maybe. Or maybe it's just helping me remember who I used to be." Meanwhile, Emily stayed for a few more days. She cooked with Peter, taught him how to use a smartphone, even helped him register for a library card again. The bond between them grew stronger every hour, but not everything was smooth. One night, Peter sat outside alone. Keanu joined him, handing him a cup of tea. "You okay?" Keanu asked. Peter stared at the stars. "I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of losing her again. Of messing this up. Of not being strong enough." Keanu nodded slowly. "Fear means it matters." "But what if I fail?" Peter whispered. Keanu looked at him, gently. "Then you try again. And again. Because now you have something worth trying for." Peter nodded, but his eyes remained heavy. The next day brought another surprise. Keanu received an email from the shelter Emily worked at. The staff had seen the video. They invited Peter to speak at an upcoming event for at-risk youth. Nothing formal, just a room of young people who needed hope. Keanu printed the email and handed it to Peter. Peter read it twice, then looked up. "Me? Talk in front of people?" "You don't have to," Keanu said. "But they want to hear you." Peter stared at the page for a long time. Then he smiled. "Maybe I will." And he did. That Saturday, Keanu and Emily sat, in the back of a community center in Oakland. The room was filled with about 30 teenagers, all from troubled homes, many of them quiet and guarded. Peter stepped onto the small stage. He wore a clean button-up shirt and held his worn notebook in both hands. He didn't read from it. Instead, he looked out over the room and began to speak. "My name is Peter," he said. "I used to think my life was over. I lost my home. I lost my family. I stopped believing in myself. I slept on the streets. I felt invisible." He paused. "But someone saw me, not because of who I was, but because I was still a person." He shared his story, not the headlines, but the pain, the doubt, the small moments that pushed him to the edge and the even smaller ones that pulled him back. He ended with this: "I thought kindness was gone from this world. But it's not. Sometimes it finds you when you least expect it. Sometimes it comes in the form of a stranger with a quiet voice and a warm jacket." Silence filled the room. Then came the applause. Real, honest, not because he was famous, but because he was brave. Afterward, several teens came up to him, too. One hugged him. Another gave him a drawing. One young boy whispered, "I want to be like you." "Strong," Peter cried. And for the first time, they were tears of pride. Later that night, back at Keanu's house, Peter stood on the porch looking at the stars again. This time he smiled. Keanu joined him. "You did good," Keanu said. Peter looked at him. "So did you. You saved a stranger." Keanu shook his head. "No, I just offered a hand. You climbed out yourself." But just as life seemed to be settling into peace, something unexpected happened again. Because buried deep in one of Peter's old notebooks was a secret, a name, a letter, and a piece of his past that he had forgotten. Something, or someone, waiting to be found. The forgotten letter. The air inside the house was warm and peaceful. Peter had just returned from his second speaking event at another youth shelter. This time he hadn't needed a notebook. His words came straight from the heart. Emily was proud. Keanu was quietly pleased. That night, as Peter was organizing the small box of old things Keanu had helped him save from his cart, he paused. Tucked inside an old envelope, yellowed with time and damp at the corners, was a folded letter. The writing on the outside was faded, but legible. "To my dad, please come find me." Peter stared at it, heart pounding. He slowly unfolded the paper. It was written in a child's handwriting, shaky and messy. Some of the words were smudged by what looked like old tears. "Dear Dad, Mom says, we have to move again. I don't want to. I miss you every day. If you find this, I'm going to be at Grandma's house in Fresno. I hope you find me. I love you. Love, Emily." Peter's hands began to shake. He sat down on the bed, holding the letter like it was made of glass. Keanu walked by the door and noticed the look on his face. "You okay?" Peter handed him the letter. Keanu read it, then looked up in quiet awe. "You never saw this before?" "I must have missed it," Peter whispered. "It must have been in the box all along. And now, after all this time—" He stopped, his eyes suddenly wide. "Grandma's house," he said softly. Keanu tilted, his head. "What is it?" Peter stood quickly, grabbed the shoebox and began digging through it. Under a layer of old receipts and torn notebooks, he found a photo. It showed a small wooden house with sunflowers in front of the porch. In the corner, someone had written, "Granny Rose's house, 1997. Peter held the photo beside the BUA letter. "She's gone now, passed away years ago. But if Emily left this letter, she might have spent more time there than she remembers. And someone else might have been there too." "Someone else?" Keanu asked. Peter swallowed hard. "Her brother." Keanu blinked. "Emily has a brother?" Peter nodded slowly. "She never met him. Different mom. It was before my marriage. His name was Daniel. I haven't spoken to him in over 20 years. We lost touch after everything." Keanu leaned in. You think he could still be out there? I don't know, Peter said, voice soft. But if this letter survived, maybe something else did too. With Keanu's help, they began digging. The address on the back of the photo gave them a place to start. Keanu's team made some calls. The house still existed. It had been sold to a new family, but some of the original mail had been left behind in a storage unit. By the next afternoon, Peter and Keanu were on the road. Emily stayed behind, nervous but supportive. She helped pack snacks and insisted they call every hour. The drive to Fresno was long but quiet. Peter stared out the window most of the time, deep in thought. You think he'll want to see me? He asked once, voice barely above a whisper. You thought the same thing about Emily, Keanu reminded him gently. Peter smiled faintly. Yeah, and look how that turned out. They reached the old neighborhood by late evening. The house had been painted, the flowers replaced with a trimmed hedge. A middle-aged woman answered the door and kindly pointed them toward the storage unit, where the previous owner's old things were boxed up. Keanu and Peter opened the dusty unit slowly. The scent of old paper and wood filled the air. They sorted, through boxes filled with dishes, books, clothes, until Peter pulled out a small cigar box marked Rose's Keepsakes. Inside were letters, photos, a journal, and at the bottom, a small envelope addressed to Daniel T. Peter's hands trembled as he opened it. The letter inside was short. Daniel, if you ever come looking, your father never stopped loving you. He tried to find you. I kept these letters safe in case you came here. Love, Granny Rose. Below it were 6 unopened letters from Peter, all returned marked address not found. Keanu put a hand on Peter's shoulder. This matters. They scanned through the journal and finally found a name, Daniel Thomas, and a last known school in Bakersfield. Keanu called a friend at a records office. Within an hour, they had something, a mechanic named Daniel T., who now lived in Stockton. Peter stared at the paper, his knees weak. I can't believe this. We can try, Keanu said. Just try. They arrived at a small auto garage the next morning. The air smelled of oil and steel. The sun was just rising as Peter stepped out of the car. A tall man with dark hair streaked with gray stepped out from the garage, wiping grease from his hands. He looked up as the two approached. Peter froze. The man stared at him. Daniel, Peter said quietly. The man stiffened. Who's asking? Peter's voice shook. It's me, your father. Silence, a crow cawed in the distance. A breeze blew through the chain-link fence. You? Daniel said, his voice cold. After all this time? Peter stepped closer. I didn't leave you. I tried. I wrote. But I didn't know where you were. I messed up, but I never stopped caring. Daniel's eyes flashed. Granny told me different. Said you were scared. Said you were broken. I was, Peter admitted. But I still tried. Daniel's face softened just slightly. Why now? Peter looked back at Keanu, who nodded encouragingly. Because someone gave me a second chance, Peter said. And I want to offer you one too. Daniel stared at him for a long time. Then, slowly, he walked forward. He didn't hug Peter, but he didn't walk away either. And for now, that was enough. Full circle. The auto shop smelled of motor oil and steel. The morning sun poured through the dusty windows, casting long shadows on the concrete floor. Peter stood silently, face lined with both hope and fear, as Daniel watched him from just a few feet away. Neither man spoke for a moment. Daniel broke the silence first. You were gone a long time, he said, his voice low. Peter nodded slowly. I know, and not a day went by that I didn't wish I had done things differently. Daniel crossed his arms. Granny Rose said you were a good man. Just lost. I didn't know what to believe. She was right about one thing, Peter said. I was lost. I failed a lot. But something or someone brought me back. He glanced at Keanu, who waited quietly by the car. Daniel looked over too, narrowing his eyes. Is that KeanuReeves? Peter chuckled softly. Yeah, long story. A long silence followed. Then Daniel sighed. You want to get coffee or something? Peter's eyes lit up. I'd like that. They sat in a small diner down the street, the kind with old booths and scratched-up tables. They didn't dive into heavy talk. They started simple. Daniel spoke about the garage, the cars he'd fixed, the community he built in Stockton. Peter shared stories about the shelters he'd visited with Emily, how he was starting to write again, how he found purpose in speaking to people who felt forgotten. As they spoke, something subtle happened. The tension faded. The anger melted away. Not all at once, but enough to let something else take its place. A connection. A second chance. By the end of the meal, Daniel gave a half smile. You know, he said, you're not who I expected you to be. I hope that's a good thing, Peter replied. Daniel nodded slowly. It is. Keanu waited outside, watching as father and son walked back toward the garage together, side by side. When they reached him, Daniel looked at Keanu. Thank you, he said, extending a hand. Keanu shook it. I didn't do much. You saw him, Daniel said. Not many people do that anymore. They said goodbye with plans to talk again soon. No promises, no pressure. Just the beginning of something new. On the drive back, Peter was quiet, staring out the window with a calm smile. I never thought any of this could happen, he said finally. I just wanted a warm meal, a little kindness. But you gave me my life back. Keanu looked at him. You rebuilt it, I just opened a door. When they reached home, Emily was waiting. She hugged Peter tightly, tears in her eyes when she saw the photo he brought back from the garage. Him and Daniel side by side, smiling in grease-covered clothes. That evening, the three of them sat together, Keanu, Peter, and Emily, under the soft glow of the living room lamp. Peter held a notebook in his lap, now almost full. His fingers brushed the pages like they were something sacred. What are you going to do with all that? Emily asked. Peter looked up. I think I'm going to write a book. Keanu raised his eyebrows. A book? Not about me, Peter said. About people. People who fall. People who break. And the hands that help them stand again. Emily smiled. You'll change lives, Dad. Peter laughed softly. Maybe. Or maybe just one. Either way, it'll be worth it. A few weeks later, Peter's first essay was published on a nonprofit's blog. It went viral in a single day. People from all over the world read about the man who had once been broken, forgotten, lost, and how one act of kindness turned it all around. Donations poured into shelters. Volunteers signed up. Schools invited Peter to speak. And through it all, Keanu stayed in the background, watching, smiling, never asking for credit, because that wasn't what it was about. It was about the quiet man on a rainy sidewalk, the bullies who thought he didn't matter, the actor who stopped and said, I see you, and the life that changed because of it. Months passed. Then one day, as the seasons turned and the sun rose gently on a new morning, Peter stood on a small stage at a high school auditorium, looking out over hundreds of students. He held the same photo of Emily in her red dress. He spoke of loss, of hope, of forgiveness, of second chances. And when he ended his speech, he looked out at the crowd and said, sometimes the world will pass you by, but that doesn't mean you don't matter. It only takes one person to change everything. And sometimes that person is a stranger, sometimes it's you. The students rose in applause. In the back of the room, Keanu clapped quietly. He didn't need the spotlight. He'd already seen the brightest light of all, in the heart of a man who once sat cold and trembling on a sidewalk, and now stood tall, whole, and full of life.